Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro also took the stage for a speech focused on protecting freedom. Shapiro, who was a finalist to be Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate, partly used his time last night to rail against former President Donald Trump, who he said is trying to strip Americans of their rights. Take a look.
Kamala Harris, well, she has spent her entire career making progress. Donald Trump, a man with no guardrails, wants to take away our rights and our freedoms. And listen, while he cloaks himself in the blanket of freedom, what he's offering isn't freedom at all. Because hear me on this, it's not freedom to tell our children what books they're allowed to read. No, it's not. And it's not freedom to tell women what they can do with their bodies. And hear me on this, it sure as hell isn't freedom to say you can go vote, but he gets to pick the winner. That's not freedom. Kamala and Tim's names may be on the ballot, but it's your rights. It's our rights. It's our future and freedoms that are on the line. And you have the power to shape the future of this country. Just like our ancestors who fought for freedom on the battlefield and sat in at lunch counters so our kids could stand up. Now it's on us. It's on us, my friends, to organize in our communities and on our For You pages around three basic American principles.
Can I do one edit? Tim, is it okay if I do one edit as a former Republican?
Do an edit.
Because they're
I get
like,
the edit.
they're trying to speak
but
to
that was really good.
Conservatives. Josh Shapiro is great.
Amazing.
I want him to be vice president. I made that very clear. I just want to do one edit that every time I hear it, as a former Republican, it kind of, I was like, eh.
Abortion?
No. When he says it's not freedom to tell children what books they can read. It should be, it's not freedom to tell parents what books their children can read.
That's a good edit.
There's a big difference.
It's a good edit.
It's a good edit.
Because some of these books that are like out there are books that we would not want our children to read.
Yeah.
But it should be the parents' decision and not the governor's decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, good edit.
Yeah, I think that's a fair edit. I'll send it through to Governor
Okay,
Shapiro's
if you can
team.
send it through.
I'll send it through to his
Like
team.
hours and
team.
hours of programming, you've come up with an edit.
It's all just one. But Donna, you know, we were both of us. You and I were both in the Shapiro cheering section.
Wonderful.
And wanted him to be the vice presidential pick. But man, I've been surprised by how good Tim Walz has been. I'm just really shocked, actually. What about you?
People don't realize that Joe fields a lot of hysterical calls from a lot of people, including me. And when they didn't pick Shapiro, I was like, he made a mistake. They didn't make a mistake. Walz has been, Shapiro's amazing, but Walz has been the right pick. And, he talked about being a neighbor, and there's a great slogan where, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Like a good neighbor, Tim Walz is there.
Yeah.
He is that guy.
The whole plaid shirt thing.
And I'll tell you also the other emotional moment for me when his son was standing crying and pointing and going, that's my dad up there. That's my, if you're a son, if you're a father, if you're anybody, you could not react to that. But Tim Walz has been a revelation. He is a rock star. I am just blown away by him.
Yeah, he really is. Following that speech, Trump attacked Shapiro on social media, referring to him as, quote, the highly overrated Jewish governor of Pennsylvania. He went on to add, quote, I have done more for Israel than any person, and it's not even close. Shapiro has done nothing for Israel and never will. And Willie Geist, it's always helpful to your campaign when you attack the governor of a state you desperately need.
Yeah, by the way, and identify him as the highly overrated Jewish governor.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of these moments we talk about, guys, where people go, oh, there he goes again. No. Let's stop for a minute. The man who wants to be president again is calling Josh Shapiro a Jewish governor, sending up smoke signals to some of his supporters. And I mean, he's lost his ability, if he ever had it, Caddy, to use innuendo, and now he's just coming out and saying these things absolutely out loud about Josh Shapiro. He's Jewish, so take what he says with a grain of salt. You know, it's staggering.
There's been quite a lot of focus on Tim Walz, and did he actually go to war? And he said he carried a weapon in war, and he didn't actually go to war. And it's probably right that the man who is going to be the Vice President of the United States has some scrutiny on him. But every time we go to scrutiny like that, you have to remind yourself of some of the things that Donald Trump will say, and make no bones about it. And he will identify Josh Shapiro not as the governor, not as the great governor, not as the effective governor, but as the Jewish governor, and making him then part of another group. And it's not even a dog whistle at this point. It's a bullhorn. It's out there and it's blunt. I mean, by the way, he has a habit of attacking governors of states that he needs to win. So Pennsylvania, Georgia. I mean, is he going to start ticking off the list? I'm not quite sure what he's going to start saying about the governors of Nevada and Arizona soon, but they should start watching their bags.
I'm so glad you said that. Donald Trump's talking about Governor Brian Kemp, the extraordinarily popular governor in the state of Georgia.
And attacking his wife as well, apparently, which that's really not gone down well in Georgia.
And Governor Kemp's sin is saying, no, the count was right in 2020 in our state. We supported Donald Trump. I voted for him, but we got the vote right, and that's his sin. Donald Trump continues to flail. We see it right there, the anti-Semitism in that post. Also yesterday at his rally, just again, meandering, making up a story about Kamala Harris meeting with Vladimir Putin 3 days before Putin decided to go into Ukraine. That meeting never took place. He's just making stuff up again.
No, in the days before the invasion, Vice President Harris met with President Zelensky of Ukraine at the Munich Security Conference as part of delivering messages like, look, this invasion's about to come, showing the important role she did play in President Biden's foreign policy. The Trump thing, yesterday he had this rally in North Carolina, as you said, and at one point he even polled the crowd and said, well, you know, my advisors want me to stick to policy. You know, the Obamas, they got personal. Should I do the same? And he asked the crowd what they think, and they, of course, all cheered to say, yes, you should go on personal attacks. And then hours later, he does this inflammatory post on Truth Social. And it's a reminder, actually, Simone, there is a current here about Trump. And I thought one of the more powerful moments last night, it was searing to see, is the January 6th footage. And Congressman Benny Thompson introduced it. And it was really sort of difficult to watch. And we've all lived with this, and we talk about January 6th nearly every day. This is the first election post-January 6th, the first presidential election post-January 6th, and that matters. And I think the Democrats were smart, even if they're moving away from the, hey, Trump's a threat to democracy line a little bit, but they're smart to remind people just how dangerous he was and how he's laying the groundwork to potentially do it again.
The footage is very important, I think, to play, because a lot of folks, if you just think about it, there are a lot of people that maybe have tuned out, maybe have forgotten, given all the misinformation and disinformation from Republicans, specifically on Capitol Hill. And so seeing the footage matters because it was terrible. No one, and reminding people that this is what it was the last January 6th when Donald Trump sent his supporters out and told them to march on the Capitol. And so I do think it's very important. Look, I know that there's all this harping on, Democrats aren't leaning into the threat to democracy anymore, but I think that talking about the stakes of this election gets that done in a way that everyone can still understand, because democracy, to be honest, people feel differently about it. You know, for some folks, democracy has never fully worked for them in this country, so they don't feel as though that message of democracy speaks to them. But the stakes, everybody understands that, and they're high.